What happens when you take an enthusiastic crew of miles and points obsessed travelers, give them 40,000 points, $400, and let them loose around the world?
Why did nobody tell me that this was an option?
Ended up sleeping overnight in the car.
So part of the bus fell off, apparently.
Well, let's just say it involves close calls, some great people, lots of different countries, and just a few
Bad lounge bathrooms.
Welcome to the recap of Frequent Miler's very first group challenge, 2019's 40K to Far Away. Not only will we get to see some never-before-seen footage, but we'll catch up with the guys now, nearly 6 years later in 2025, and hear some of their fresh takes on this groundbreaking challenge. Buckle up and get ready for the ride. As many of our astute friends and readers may remember, while this was the first group challenge, Greg had embarked on a number of adventurous and memorable solo challenges in Frequent Miler days past. As he mentioned on the blog, this included a New York City visit for $19 per day, a challenge to earn 1 million points and miles in 1 month, and a challenge to earn 1.2 million Virgin Atlantic miles in order to visit Ngor Island, which he was able to do in October of 2016. If you haven't heard about those solo challenges yet, visit frequentmiler.com to check them out. Greg certainly set the bar pretty high leading into our first ever group challenge. So how did this challenge come to be? Well, Greg and Nick discussed it on their Frequent Miler on the Air podcast.
The 40K to Far Away, that idea came up when I was out of the room, but you and Steven, what we're discussing, somehow came up with this idea of giving us each 40,000 transferable points to play with. And each of us have a different transferable points currency. And the goal is to see who can get the furthest away. That's what our challenge is.
That's the truth. And I got to give credit to Stephen Pepper because I think most of this was his idea. Maybe I contributed something along the way, but it was a fantastic idea that we decided that it'd be more fun if we each took a different currency because then everybody has different advantages and disadvantages and we can see which currency is really the best.
After some thought and discussion, they decided that Greg would take Chase Ultimate Rewards points, Nick would use Citi Thank You points, and Steven would take Amex membership reward points. And if you're wondering where some of our other Frequent Miler team was, this was actually before they were a part of the crew yet, and so it was up to these 3 Pointsketeers to kick off our first ever challenge. The official challenge budget for each participant was 40,000 points and only $400 for things like taxes, fees, food, and transport. And there was an important reason behind that amount.
And really it kind of built from what could we do with a sign-up bonus? And we knew we need some cash in order to pay for fuel surcharges and things like that. So really built off the idea that the Inc. Business Preferred sign-up bonus being 80K. So, okay, if we took 40K and cashed it out for $400 to pay our fees and used 40K to transfer to partners or use as we please, where could we get?
So equipped with their respective points and cash currency, they also needed a few official rules. First of all, they needed to count for every dollar within that $400 budget. Secondly, it was a one-way challenge, so they didn't have to account for their travel back home. And last of all, beyond advice, they could not accept any help from readers. They did agree, however, that just like they would if they were traveling on vacation, that they could accept help from friends, family, and people that they met along the way. And in true Frequent Miler fashion, the guys were so excited leading up to the departure to showcase how points could be used like this.
This challenge has been so much fun. I am thinking about it nonstop. Like I keep coming up with different ideas. They're spinning around in the middle of the night. Like I'll wake up at 4 a.m, be lying awake. And then it's like, I need to go look at award charts to see if this thing is possible.
Does that work?
Are you doing the same?
Yeah, really, we are. And I know it's not just us either. I know Stephen Pepper is frantically doing the same thing. And,
exactly.
I've been saying, don't sleep on Stephen Pepper. The man's doing a 5-year, 50-state road trip in the United States. He eats and breathes economy class travel. I think he's going to be a really formidable competitor.
And 6 years later, Greg noted,
I remember working like crazy to plan it. Like, there was no challenge since then that I worked quite as hard to plan every little detail.
And so, after months of preparation and equipped with their points, cash, and a few essential items,
This is my butt pad. This inflates. It's going to save my butt while I'm traveling.
in October of 2019, it was time to hit the road. All 3 of our participants began their journey in Washington, D.C. The first day of the challenge, Greg and Nick were up early to head to the airport, while Stephen Pepper stayed in bed. His flight didn't leave until the afternoon. With Nick's early arrival to the airport, he took advantage of dining credit at a Priority Pass restaurant. Perks like this and lounge access was going to be an important element of making sure that guys got fed on a budget during this challenge. That left Nick all smiles for his first flight, but a tight connection and some angry airline customers left him huffing and puffing by the time he made it on his flight to Hawaii. Greg was also able to take advantage of breakfast at a lounge, enjoying it at the Virgin Clubhouse, but he had some concerns about his flight.
My flight was just announced delay. Now, luckily, I don't have tight connections this morning. What will be a big problem is if the flight is outright canceled or delayed for a number of hours, then I'm in big trouble, because my morning plans really lead to everything else on my whole 40K to faraway journey. If I don't do the morning flights, I'm gonna have to rethink the majority of the trip. So this is the one thing I was sort of most worried about in my plans, that seemed like the most likely thing, because I knew United would fly very small jets to West Virginia from here, so they're more likely to delay or cancel these little guys. So we'll see what happens.
That's right. Greg was headed to West Virginia for his first flight, ironically to the county that frequent miler Caroline Yoder now resides 6 years later. Greg shared with us in Reflections why this flight was so important to his 40K adventure.
So I had Chase points to work with, and United is like the main airline transfer partner. And so I wanted to eke out the most possible value I could from my United miles. And that was by totally maximizing something called the United Excursionist Perk, which is unfortunately ending next month as we're recording this. The thing is, Drew McComber of Travel is Free, I know you might know of him. He had written a post about how you could use the Excursionist Perk in a way that was not as intended, basically. So from that, I figured out that if I could just fly from Washington, D.C. to Lewisburg, West Virginia, it was like a 30-minute flight, that would set me up for a free flight all the way across Africa. By flying the return flight from Lewisburg to DC, that set me up for another free flight across Africa. My first thing was to get on board a United flight to fly all the way to Lewisburg and exit the airport, go through the little tiny terminal, back in, and board the same exact plane to fly back.
Thankfully, he made it, and even if he was back to his starting destination, everything was good to go.
So now I'm having lunch at the Air France Priority Pass Lounge, and I'm back in Dulles, so I've gone exactly as far as Stephen did while lying in bed all morning. Anyway.
Armed with some ham on a baguette for a free dinner to go, Greg had a little time to enjoy the city.
You can probably guess where I am. I'm in National Mall in downtown DC, and I'm about to go check out a free tour at the Library of Congress. I've never been into the library before, so this should be interesting.
Greg noted on the blog that while the tour guide wasn't great, the building was fascinating and definitely worth the bus fare to get there. Then it was off to Union Station to catch a megabus to New York City. So how did Stephen's 40K adventure get started after a good night's and morning's rest? Well, his main objective for the day was also to hop on a bus headed north but to Newark. Right out of the gate, he was a little concerned when his Greyhound e-ticket could not be found on the app. But after a little help from staff, no harm, no foul, he was on his way. Jumping to the middle of the Pacific to catch up with Nick, we were pleased to see he had made it safely to the Aloha State. As many may remember, his flight to Hawaii marked a memorable discovery in the miles and points world that year.
That's, these challenges force us to try to do something creative. And it did. It forced me to learn about a program I had never looked at. Turkish Miles and Smiles was a program I think basically everybody ignored up until that point. But at some point, they changed their award chart and I was the first person to notice, I guess, or the first person to publish a post having noticed it, because I realized that Honolulu was part of North America and going to be included as a domestic flight for people flying from the U.S. And the reason that mattered was because Turkish had a sweet spot, just 7,500 miles each way at the time for a domestic flight, a domestic Star Alliance flight. And of course, Hawaii is a domestic destination. So you could fly all the way from the East Coast of the United States to Hawaii for 7,500 miles on United. Now that's 10,000 miles, which is still a fantastic deal compared to what United will charge. And so that was a big find because I could get, thousands of miles away, pretty far away for very few points. So I sent Greg a message and I said, I found something really big. And part of me thinks I should hold on to this and not write about it yet because I'll probably use it for the challenge. But the other part of me says this would be really big news that a lot of people could benefit from. And so, he asked me a couple of questions about that. And he said, well, I think we should probably publish it then. That way readers can take advantage of it. I think that motivates a lot of what we do or helps guide some of our decisions. If it'll benefit readers, then it makes sense. And he was totally right. I made sure that I could book it first. I think we did an FM to go a couple of days before I published it in Minneapolis, if I remember correctly. And during the presentation there, I said, I think that this is true. I won't know probably for a couple more days, because at that point I had to book via email. A bit of a process booking via email, but I said, I'm pretty sure that this is true, and watched the blog for an update. And I think it was just 4 or 5 days later that I was able to confirm it. And so, yeah, we published it. Heard from a number of readers who've done it again and again and again over time to fly to Hawaii. And that's been awesome.
So thanks to Nick's discovery, he found himself in Hawaii, a great spot to kick off his adventures.
Made it to Honolulu. So I'm here at Honolulu Airport. My flight was a little bit delayed, so I got in a little bit late. And now I am waiting for the bus to try to do something that is a little out of my comfort zone. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work out, but I'm going to give it a shot. Hopefully you're going to see something cool in a couple hours. So yeah, just take a look at this and how majestically beautiful this is. So this is the Lanikai Pillboxes hike, which I didn't make it up to the top of the Pillboxes hike, but I still got rewarded with some killer views. But look at that, it is just gorgeous up here.
And after his hike back down, he got to enjoy a visit with some points and miles enthusiasts in Honolulu at Uncle Clay's House of Pure Aloha, a must-stop spot. Things took a little bit of a turn after this, but let's discuss that after we circle back to the other guys for a moment. Last we left Greg, he was on a long bus ride to New York City. Upon arrival, he headed to the airport with a little help from a friend.
Hey, I'm here with Julian Keel, who used to actually write for me as the Devil's Advocate, and he did the Bet You Didn't Know series. Now, Julian, when I told you about this 40K challenge that I was doing, I asked you if you wanted to come along, and first you said yeah.
Yeah, and then I stopped drinking.
But here you are, you're with me.
Yes.
On this challenge.
You would think a world traveler such as Greg would know how to get from the bus to the airport by himself. And yet, here I am, helping him get from the bus to the airport.
So, no, but then we're going on to Madrid.
No, you're going on to Madrid. I'm going home.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Well, flying economy solo wasn't too bad, considering he got a shower in just in time at one of the lounges. And remember, he had a special cushion to keep his economy class comfy. Oh no! We asked Greg 6 years later if he remembered this item and misfortune from his trip.
Yes. It was a brief time with that item. You know, I hadn't traveled long distances in economy for a while leading up to this trip, and I knew I would be. And I also knew that sometimes when I fly in economy and you sit there for a long time, my butt starts to hurt really bad. So I invested in a inflatable butt pillow that I could that I could carry with me. So I left DC. It made it with me to, I think, the subway that I rode on with Julian to get to JFK. Somewhere between then and making it through security, it was gone. It turned out that the economy flying, I was fine. I didn't have any trouble.
Well, we're glad to hear it. Armed with good spirits, Greg was headed on his overnight flight to Madrid, his first time flying Norwegian Airlines, which he enjoyed. Stephen also took a bus north from DC, preparing to fly out of Newark in the morning. While on the bus ride, he realized he needed a visa for his upcoming 5-hour layover, and purchasing it online narrowly missed that becoming a snafu later. Keeping things on such a tight budget meant Stephen had to spend the night on the airport floor. He shared with us later some of his tips for getting shut-eye at the gate.
So yeah, I think what I did is I attached the rucksack to the hiking backpack.
Yeah.
And then when I was sleeping, I had my arm looped through the hiking backpack strap, so that way people wouldn't be able to easily pull it away and stuff like that, just in case someone tried to be sneaky.
Well, after a restless night, Stephen did enjoy being up early for a robust free lounge breakfast before his flight to Toronto. That's right, the visa he'd needed was for a layover in Canada. And in the spirit of the stringent budget of this challenge, Stephen flew basic economy right next to the loo. A long layover in Toronto afforded Stephen some free food and a shower at a lounge. One of the things he wanted to do during this challenge was to try a quintessential dish from each country.
Because food when you're traveling is such a quintessential part of the experience, just because different countries have different foods, and so you can get a much better flavor, I guess pun sort of intended. I get a flavor of the country by eating their national dishes and things like that. So yeah, it's just a fun way to get to experience a country a little bit more.
While this was tricky on a budget, a Tim Hortons donut fit the Canadian bill well on a dime. And after that, he too was off to Madrid, flying Air Canada, who fed him along the way. Going back to the topic of uncomfortable budget sleeping situations, let's see how Nick is doing in Hawaii. We showed him this photo from the blog to see if he remembered this moment. It's coming.
Yes, I do. I remember that very clearly. The picture you shared there, that's the Hyatt Place Waikiki Beach, or Hyatt Place. It's in Honolulu. That was because I had a flight out early the next morning, but of course, with a budget of just 40,000 points and $400 and the cost of accommodation in Hawaii, there wasn't really enough money to stay somewhere in Honolulu. And it was just hours that I needed to kind of fill in the gap. And then I figured I could sleep on the plane on the way to Japan. So I decided I would stay awake all night and work. And I had been in Honolulu at some point. So I had a room key from this particular hotel from a previous stay. I kept it. I had it in my bag. And so I thought, well, if I sit down in the lobby at a table and I put a room key in front of me, everyone will assume that I'm staying at the hotel and leave me alone and let me just sit there and work. So the last time I stayed there, exactly, I'd worked late in the lobby. And I say the last time I'd stayed there, I think it was pretty recently before this. I can't remember exactly how recently, but it was recently enough that I think, if I remember correctly, I recognized whoever was working the desk.
Oh, really?
And so I sat there and again, I think that everybody just assumed I was either still there or back or whatever the case may be. And so I got my juice and my water bottle and sat there on my computer. As long as I could keep my eyes open, I think I drifted off a couple of times.
After dozing off numerous times, Nick decided to head to the airport early. Hopping on a bus, he unfortunately fell asleep and missed his stop, and so decided to dip into his meager budget for an Uber the rest of the way. Unfortunately, the Honolulu airport was not open all night, but never fear, Nick had this comfy, cozy concrete slab for rest.
It was a cozy slab. I mean, you weren't on the ground, so it was elevated and it was relatively clean. But I should be clear that the next challenge we have set a requirement that you do need to get a hotel to sleep in. Gotcha. No concrete slabs. I think I probably caused that rule.
Thankfully, he at least got a couple hours of sleep once inside the airport before checking in. Then, thanks to a tip by one of his reader friends he met up with the day before, he was able to access the inter-island terminal for a better lounge with a hearty breakfast. And more food for no extra cost was to come with a delicious beef curry on his flight to Tokyo. Checking back in with Greg and Steven, they both were headed to Madrid for their first cross-Atlantic destination. Greg arrived to Madrid first, and after setting himself up with an all-day, all-transit type tourist pass, he headed to a WeWork space where he hoped to grab some food and iron out some couchsurfing lodging for the night. That's right, he did not know where he was going to stay yet. Hopefully no concrete slabs for him.
I'm at a WeWork location in Madrid, Spain. I had to actually sign a special waiver just to be allowed to make a video here. But so I'm trying to be careful not to show any people, because if I show any people, they'll make me delete the video, just like they made me delete some earlier ones I talked. But anyway, so I'm going to try to show you a little bit of the office while I talk a little bit about it. This has been a great experience coming here. They have free drinks, and real soon they're going to be putting out free snacks for happy hour. So I'm going to be able to get a meal out of this, and I was able to get a little work done, recharge my devices. Overall, I think this was a pretty successful use of my WeWork free perk for my business platinum card.
Thankfully, he did get his couchsurfing situation figured out, but not without some concerns in the beginning. A last-minute host came to the rescue.
Jose, if I remember right. He was my savior. I arrived in Madrid with no plan where I was going to spend the night. I thought before I had flown, I had posted a plea in the Couchsurfing forum, but there was some kind of technical glitch and it never showed up. So it wasn't until I was actually in Madrid in a place where I could use my computer that I saw that it wasn't there. And obviously no one had responded. So I posted there and Jose responded not too long after, thankfully.
Nice. Jose was a wonderful guy indeed. And Greg noted later how much he was a help to him during his visit.
But he gave me a list of places to go and see, and I walked all around and did that. And then I went to his place and he made dinner, and he prepared his living room like a bedroom. It had a door that shut, and he prepared the couch with sheets and a pillow and everything. So I couldn't have been more comfortable. I wasn't on a, airport slab like some other fella, I had to get to bed something like 3 a.m. if I'm remembering correctly, to get to the airport for the next flight out. And he was making coffee and toast for me. It was crazy how much he did for me. It was wonderful.
So thanks to Jose for a wonderful Madrid visit, Greg was off to another continent in the morning. But how was Steven's Spanish escapade? Arriving just an hour before Greg's departure for Madrid, Stephen dipped into the budget to store his luggage at the airport and got the same tourist pass Greg did the day before. Rather than a tour, he had created 2 extensive Google Map routes with stops of places he wanted to see. This sent him on a citywide hike that ended up in 10 miles of walking around the hilly city.
I got really fortunate that day because the weather was absolutely perfect. It was warm, but it wasn't like too baking hot from what I can remember. Nice blue sky, so it was an ideal day to be walking around the city. Went inside a cathedral to look around. Got to see the Royal Palace of Madrid. Went to I think it was like a food market type area where I got empanadas, like a really beautiful city.
And after that, it was back to the airport, where thankfully, after his long hike, he got some free food and a shower at one of the lounges. Well, let's scurry across the continents to see what Nick is up to in Japan. Upon his arrival, he had a little time before dark, so he took a trek over to Narita Park near the airport, which was lovely.
So one of the things that I really love about Japan is, you can get all the hustle and bustle of like Shinjuku or Shibuya crossing and that sort of thing, but you can also get some really calm, serene, cool spots. This is really accessible from the airport, and so I really enjoy some of this stuff, being able to be in a big city where you get the hustle and bustle, but then also get a chance to just kick back and relax. Just get yourself a gorgeous view and a really relaxing sound. I mean, if you want like a little bit of de-stressing after a long travel day, this is definitely a good park to come to.
After a moment of de-stressing at the park and some airport-themed ramen, Nick got to sleep in an actual bed for the night, but at a type of hotel he had never tried before. I had to laugh. Your quote was, "I'm pretty sure my wife is excited that I've gotten that out of my system."
Yes. I think she was, because she has less than zero interest in staying in a capsule hotel. So the idea of sleeping in essentially a coffin definitely doesn't appeal to her very much. But I was always curious. I was always kind of interested in that. So I wanted to test that out and see what it was like. And it is kind of like sleeping in a coffin, I think. But at the same time, once I close my eyes and fall asleep, it's the same as sleeping on the concrete slab, essentially. So it's all kind of the same.
You're really selling it.
That's right. Nick got to stay in a capsule hotel for the first time. It may have been a bit of a cramped stay. However, later he reflected there were definitely elements he enjoyed.
No, but what I loved about the capsule hotel was the quiet. I wouldn't have thought that I'm somebody who craves quiet. At least I wasn't at that point in my time. But it's so silent. You walk in and there are signs about being respectful and quiet, and nobody makes a sound. So you get into a locker room where you can change and stuff, and it's incredibly quiet in there. And then you get into the area with the capsules, and you could hear a pin drop in there. Yeah. And I would have thought, if you had asked me if I would like that I wouldn't, but it was so relaxing. And now, as a parent of 2 young kids that make a little noise now and then, I appreciate that sense of quiet. And I think that was something that actually came out of the trip, that I actually enjoyed, like not talking. And I'm somebody who talks a lot, as you can tell.
From there, he was headed to what would be his first big snafu of the trip. But first, let's see where the other guys have embarked to after their respective visits to Madrid. Greg found his way from Spain to Dakar, Senegal for the start of his first excursionist perk across Africa. Enjoying his second couchsurfing adventure turned out to be a highlight of his day in Senegal, which also included a trip to Ngor Island.
For those wondering where I've been sleeping as I travel, I've been couchsurfing, which is a great way to meet local people and actually get a place to stay for free. And in both cases I've tried so far, the hosts have also prepared authentic local food. It was ungodly hot here in Dakar. No surprise, I am in Africa, but I went out a bit. I went to Ngor Island, which was okay. Truthfully, I was hot and tired, and so I probably didn't enjoy it as much as I could have, but I very much enjoyed being hosted here. Penelope, you're the best.
Later, Greg reflected on his time in Senegal. Can you remember
that? Real Senegalese, which was amazing. What I do remember pretty vividly is that this picture of us all sitting around the table with spoons in our hands and no individual plates, that's the Senegalese way of eating. You just share one big plate.
He also shared some distinct memories from his Ngor Island adventure.
Yeah, so to get to this island, where I was staying was really close to the shore where you can take a boat. So I walked to get to where the boats are. Then you have people coming to you trying to be your tour guide or something. I found that whole situation difficult and uncomfortable because if I was there as an actual tourist, I would have been like, I don't mind giving this guy 10, 20 bucks or whatever, but in this situation, I couldn't. Like, if I wanted to win this challenge, I wanted to stay within budget. So I had to be really firm in those situations. I managed to get the boat for the amount that my host had told me it should cost. And I got to the island. I mean, it was crazy hot. I was very tired. There were very few shaded spots around the island. The only way to get cooled down at all was to go into a bar or restaurant where I didn't really want to go because I didn't want to spend money. Ultimately, I walked back to the beach. I was just like, I'll try to find the boat to go back. And now this is harder than I thought it would be because there are lots of different boats. There's no indication which one is the one that I had bought like round trip transportation on. And then this guy who you see in that picture came out and was like, would you like a beer? It was shaded and there was a place to sit. So I was like, all right, I have enough money for a beer. So I went and sat down with him, had a beer. And then there was this whole issue about trying to get change for the beer. And then ultimately I needed his help too, to find the right boat to take me back. He had promised he would. The boat that was supposed to take me back left before he got my change.
Oh no.
So he ran up to like some random other boat, basically got them to, put me on the boat for free. So I did get back thanks to him. Yeah. In the meantime, while I was sitting with him, he tried to sell me drugs and I think a prostitute.
Oh boy.
I said no to both.
That would have definitely wrecked the budget, I think.
That was the reason I said no.
Exactly. You can't.
There was also, to get to the Couchsurf home, the host had told me, take a bus to wherever, to the spot, and then take a taxi from there to the house. And that taxi should cost, let's say, $2. I can't remember. And so I did that. I took the bus there to just this dirt lot where there's all these buses and taxis sitting there. And I go up to a taxi window and I talk sort of pidgin English to get my point across where I'm trying to go and how much I'm willing to pay. He agrees. About halfway through the drive, started telling me that the $2 or whatever it was not enough. I would need to pay him $5. And I had to argue. And again, that's one of those things where I wouldn't have cared as a regular tourist, but I had to keep arguing. It became very tense. But then when we get there and he drops me off, all of a sudden he's my buddy again. He's like, all right, have a great day. And so then I realized, okay, that's just the way they operate there. That it's just what you have to expect. And so I had the exact same thing happen on the reverse, getting the taxi back to the bus to get to the airport the next day.
Greg mentioned later these elements definitely made his visit to Dakar a little more difficult. However,
the time in the Couchsurfing home with the host and the other Senegalese people who were there, they were so charming. We had a great time.
All things considered, Greg didn't regret his Senegal stay, but he had to
get up very early again tomorrow morning to fly to my next location.
But let's head back to Stephen. Flying from Madrid, he arrived in Brussels at 11:30 p.m. Rather than booking lodging, he opted to make an airport bench his home for the night. And for a late dinner, he busted into a very important food he had packed in his 40K to faraway bag to help him keep within budget.
What I have is a bunch of wraps. The thing is that they're actually really tasty, even though they're like high fiber, whole wheat or whatever. And to go with those, I have a ton of tuna packets. I'm not planning on being antisocial, so I won't be eating these on a plane or anything like that, in case any of you are worried that I'm going to be that really antisocial person who cracks open some tuna in the middle of a flight.
Well, we're glad to hear it. And this was Stephen's reaction when we showed him a picture of his Brussels airport dinner 6 years later.
Yeah, that is mayonnaise on spicy tuna in a high fiber wrap. So yes, I'd forgotten about that. So I was like worried about having like enough snacks with me and things like that, and really didn't want to overspend. So that I'd have like some kind of lunch if I ended up needing it, or I didn't end up getting through as many of those as I thought I might. Like I did manage to snack on like a bunch of other things, but it did come in handy a few times to have those packets.
So after his clever dinner and an airport sleep, he was ready to head out to a destination near Copenhagen that housed something he was really looking forward to on this trip.
Hi, it's Stephen here. I'm in Boom, Belgium, because there's actually some pretty cool stuff in a park here. My wife and I came across these sculptures by a guy called Thomas Dambo, who's Danish, when we were in Illinois last year, and then we saw some more when we were in Kentucky, and it turns out that there's some in Belgium, so I took a 2-hour bus journey so that I could come check some of them out. This is the Magical Tower, and he basically makes all of these trolls and their hideouts out of reclaimed wood. So it's pretty impressive. And then this is one of the trolls. I think his name's Camille, I think it was. If you come up front, there's some kind of offering there. But they're pretty impressive, and it's massive. Like, I'd guess that this one is probably a good 20 feet tall or something, so actually probably even taller. And there's another, there's 7 of them in total here, and so I've already found, this is my 3rd one I found, so I'm off to try and find the other 4.
He did indeed find all 7 trolls, although it wasn't without incident.
They were excellent. It was a little bit frustrating at first because I couldn't find like 3 or 4 of them, I think it was. And so I was just like hunting around because it's this massive area. They have a big music festival there every year called Tomorrowland. Found a few of them fairly easily, but the other ones just seemed to be hidden away. And I was just about to give up, like all despondently, and then came across a visitor center on the opposite side of the park where I was just about to exit out of. And so I was like, okay, I'll just like check in there, see if they can just tell me. And then they actually, I feel like they had some kind of paper map that they were able to give me, and so I was able to find the rest of them. So that was a lot more encouraging once I'd been able to find all of those.
Unfortunately, upon his return to the city, he found storage lockers after he'd walked 6 miles troll hunting with his 25-pound backpack in tow. But never fear, some Belgian fries with currywurst did the trick to fuel him back up before a late-night bus to his next destination. Let's return to Nick, where he was flying from Tokyo to Bangkok. There he planned to spend his 9.5-hour layover enjoying Thai street food in the city.
So I had a whole plan, actually, where I was going to go and what I was going to do. I took Air Asia from Tokyo to Brisbane, and that connected in Bangkok. And so I had this whole plan as to what I was going to do. And then I went to leave the airport, and they looked at my boarding pass and they said, no, you can't leave the airport. And I said, what do you mean I can't leave the airport? I've got to give some ridiculous amount of time. And I have a US passport, so I don't need a visa or anything for Thailand. And they were adamant I couldn't. And eventually what I came to find out is that some of these discount carriers avoid paying certain taxes by not allowing their passengers to disembark. So I think, like, if you arrived in Thailand, you would owe some sort of taxes that the airline is not collecting. And so because that tax hadn't been paid on my ticket, I wasn't entitled to be able to enter Thailand. And there was no way for me to do that at the airport. It was just, no, I'm sorry, you can't leave. You're here. Yeah. But I never even considered that that is something that would be possible to happen.
Yeah.
Wasn't anywhere on my radar that maybe they won't let me leave the airport. It was just the nature of it being a super discount carrier, probably looking for every possible way to reduce the cost, to make their tickets cheaper. And it was very cheap to fly from Japan to Australia. So I guess that's part of the reason why.
Needless to say, he was disappointed and ended up spending all that time lounge hopping in the airport. He went all the way to Bangkok, and all he got was a head massage. At least he had the whole row of seats to himself on the next flight to Brisbane, Australia. The next day of Greg's journey meant he spent a full day flying his way west, then south across the African continent.
Today I flew from Dakar, Senegal to, I'm now in Ethiopia at ADD Airport, and now soon I'll be on my way to Johannesburg, South Africa. Long day of bad lounge bathrooms. Aside from that, great food at the lounge here, so that was a really nice welcome surprise. The flights were uneventful. 5 more hours to go, and then I'll make it to Johannesburg, and I have an event planned there.
But before we get to Johannesburg, let's see if Nick had a better time in Brisbane than he did in Bangkok. He didn't have a ton of time there, but enough to go grab a bite to eat.
So I got to Brisbane and checked out the Priority Pass lounge at the airport, and then I came out here to Eat Street, North Shore. But there's food from all over the world here, and it's kind of neat. So it costs $3 to get in. It's pretty cheap and easy to get here from the airport. And then you get to walk around, and there's live music, there's bands. It seems like a really great place to hang out. It's open every weekend. The band just kicked off with a little Stevie Ray Vaughan, which makes my heart smile. I'm a big Stevie Ray fan. It is huge. There's another stage, there are a bunch of different areas.
It's worth noting, Eat Street utilizes 180 repurposed recycled shipping containers for their food stalls, and it is still open for folks to enjoy.
Oh my goodness, I am enjoying this and do not want to leave tonight. First of all, take a look at what I just got here. A nice little fondue brownie. This is just the perfect afternoon in Brisbane, I'll tell you what. I definitely am not ready to go back to the airport.
But alas, back to the airport he went to catch a flight to New Zealand. Last we left Stephen, he was on a bus from Brussels to Paris. His arrival was in the middle of the night at 2:30 a.m., but he still planned to explore the city on foot.
Yeah, it did give me a good opportunity just to walk around, like see all the big sites. So because I'd been to Paris once or twice before, I already had gone up in the Eiffel Tower and things like that. And so returning, I wasn't as worried about doing all of the Paris stuff. It's amazing how much of a city you can actually see in those quiet hours just by walking around. So that was fantastic.
Yeah. Sure enough, he logged another 10 miles walking around the city, which meant a delicious Parisian ham baguette and chocolat chaud checked off both the local eats box and his deep hunger.
You can't beat a ham baguette in Paris. I have fond memories from being a kid of having a ham baguette in France. I think it was 1988 when we went there as a kid. Just remember it being really tasty. And so, yeah, getting to have that again was fantastic.
And then it was off on another bus to London. This trek happened to include a short ferry ride, which gave him bonus points for taking another mode of transport. And upon arriving at London, he dropped off his bags at a hostel and proceeded to trek nearly another 10 miles around the city that evening.
Paris was nice to walk around, but it wasn't quite as lit up, whereas London at nighttime seems to be way more lit up, especially because down by the river you've got things like the London Eye, and so that's always lit up at night even when it's not running and things like that, and all the bridges and things like that. So yeah, London's a surprisingly pretty city at nighttime.
Suffice it to say, after all that walking, he was starving, and while he couldn't find a kebab shop nearby to fulfill his original plan, some quintessentially British bites from Sainsbury's did the trick. Headed to the other side of the equator, Greg landed in Johannesburg, South Africa early in the morning and picked up a rental car from the airport.
Well, I made it to South Africa. I'm in Johannesburg Airport, and I just picked up my rental car. And now I'm about to drive a manual transmission for the first time in, maybe 20 years. And of course, I'm going to be driving on the left side of the road, so I'm on the right side of the car. Hopefully this will go well. I think it'll be fine.
While he didn't need a place to stay in Johannesburg, he had an exciting day ahead with a fascinating connection he made through the Couchsurfing community forums.
Chef Bjarne, he needs his own story. So the backstory there is that I knew I would have a pretty long amount of time in Johannesburg before getting on a train. So I was looking for self-drive safaris. I thought, wow, that'll be a great, huge thing to show on this trip. But it was hard to figure out online whether this would really work. So I went to the Couchsurfing website where they have forums for people who are local to answer questions about their destination. So I went to the Johannesburg one and I asked about this. I said exactly what I'm doing. Chef Bjarne, he responded and said, he gave me the name of a place that was within driving range. But then he wrote, he wasn't sure that it would be open for admission at 3 a.m. on Sunday. So he had checked the website, but found 2 different answers on the website. So he then called the safari place to ask them when they're really open. I was so impressed with how far he went out of his way to help some random person asking this question that I then messaged him directly, told him all about what I was doing with the challenge and just said, do you have other ideas? The safari thing, it's not sounding that likely it's going to work out. He agreed with that. We had some back and forth chats. He said there's a good chance that, you'll spend your whole morning driving around and not actually see any animals. So he was like, well, I'm I'm a chef. What would you think about a sunrise breakfast up on a hill overlooking Johannesburg? Then he would like show me around. Like that's what he offered. I was like, yeah, that sounds great. He charged me like $20 for the food and stuff he had prepared, which is totally reasonable. I had more set aside for the assumption of having to pay a park entrance fee, right? Mm-hmm. So I drove to his house and he came out to the car with this like tray. Oh, he was all dressed like as a chef, like he went up to the camera, which is great. He came out with this tray of breakfast food and everything and put it in the car. And then he took over driving, drove to this hill.
And so a day of adventure began at sunrise, overlooking the city.
I'm on top of a hill in Johannesburg, looking out over Johannesburg. Up ahead is the chef that has prepared a sunrise breakfast. So I made it here to Johannesburg, South Africa.
Welcome to Africa.
Thank you. I'm here with a chef, Bjarne. Yeah. And he is a local in Johannesburg, right? Yeah. And offered to make me a gourmet breakfast, a sunrise breakfast. We're at Northcliffe Tower, looking out over the city of Johannesburg in the distance. Here's the tower with the sunrise coming up.
So it's a water reservoir, but it's a well-known landmark and lookout point. I mean, you can see on a clear day, you can see halfway to Pretoria, and that tall building is Africa's new tallest building. He's going to be opening at the end of this year. It's going to be the Leonardo Hotel. So for breakfast, we've got a couple of fruit and yogurt cocktails, and then down on the platter here, these are bran muffins I baked last night. And with that, there's a small cheese selection. There's some bacon and cheese pancakes, and then the fruit on the side. They've got little South African specialities here. So that is called, it's an Afrikaans word called cook sister, which translated means cake sister. All right. So it's basically pastry which has been twisted into a little shape and then deep fried, all right, and then dunked in a whole lot of syrup. It's quite sweet, but it's a very traditional little Afrikaans treat.
That's amazing. I can't wait to dig in.
And dig in he did, enjoying both the breakfast and the conversation overlooking the city. After that, Bjarne took the wheel and showed Greg around the city.
As a chef, it is nice. A lot of little restaurants that are really different. I keep on using the wrong side here to put my indicator on.
Wait, why were you using the wrong side? So I know I keep doing that because in the US the signal is...
I find in cars in South Africa, they're not always on the same sides.
This is the town of Melville.
This is a little neighborhood called Melville, yeah. So smaller houses, quaint, arty kind of thing.
Soon they came to a local Sunday market and stumbled across a special celebration.
All right, this is the 6th birthday for the Rosebank Sunday Market, and they're lighting candles. It looks like that cake is going to completely explode any second now.
Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday, dear Rosebank Sunday Market. Happy birthday to us.
So you said earlier that you weren't going to sing today, but...
I felt so bad no one else was singing.
Greg reflected on the Sunday market 6 years later.
He had no idea that they were going to be celebrating their whatever year birthday, but they were. He found the owner and told her like what I was doing. And so then she gave me this grand tour.
This is literally art sourced from all over Africa.
So Donna, what is your role here?
So I own the market. I am a trader as well. Been a trader here for 30 years.
What? Say that again?
Mapoto.
Mapoto.
Yeah. You wear this apron in front. Even this big. They've got another one there. They've got the thing like this.
So you're weaving the words frequent miler into that band.
Yeah.
How in the world do you do that so fast? You just started about, it seems like 5 minutes ago.
No, I learned from my village. I learned from my grandfather. My grandfather was 162 years before he died. He was a very great man.
All right, Greg, you're going to taste something completely purely South African. It's called biltong.
Biltong.
Biltong. And it is what you call beef jerky. So it's great big chunks of meat that have been dried and spiced.
Okay, all right, so I'm going to try this.
That's very good. This is made from beef?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's also beef, but that is chili sticks.
So that's called a chili stick, spiced with chili.
Would you like to taste it?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, that is hot because it tastes right now.
No, you know what? That's really good. That's delicious. You see there's a word that says braai. Braai is a South African word for what Americans call barbecue. You'd braai a steak or sausage or lamb chops or something like that. You cook it on a fire, and that's called braai. All kinds of things. You can make little sandwiches and put them on the braai as well. It's called a braai broodjie. A broodjie is an Afrikaans word for small bread.
It's very well done rolling your R's. Is that?
Yeah, you got to do that in Afrikaans. Braai broodjie.
Nice. Good job.
Suffice it to say, Bjarne was a fantastic, serendipitous host. After their tour, Greg was headed to something he had planned much of his trip around, but let's check back in with Nick first. En route to his final destination, Nick had several layovers in New Zealand, one of which afforded him enough time for a bike ride?
So if you ever make it to Nelson Airport is right behind me there. And Nelson Cycle Hire is right behind me here. So pretty convenient for getting around by bicycle if you want to explore this region.
Okay, looks like Nick has a pretty good plan.
I looked things up and I found, there's some cool places to ride. And in fact, you could ride to this ferry and then take the ferry across to some cool place to get lunch. So I said, that actually sounds like a great idea. Let me do that. And it was 12 or 15 miles-ish or something. I don't know, a reasonable number of miles away, or what sounded reasonable.
Oh no. Well, eventually he made it to Rabbit Island, a spot he intended to catch a ferry from.
So here I am on Rabbit Island, looking out of the ocean here in New Zealand, and I gotta hustle though because I've got to make it to a ferry in another 15 minutes. Well, swing and a miss. I just rode my butt off for the last 2 miles to get here in time for the ferry, and you'll see the pictures I took as it pulled away.
Oh no, again.
So I just missed it. So I just rode 18 miles, but 18 miles on a bike to miss the ferry. And I don't have enough time to wait for the next one, otherwise I won't make my flight tonight.
Well, here's the picture he snapped that made him miss the ferry. And here's the actual ferry pulling away. Maybe things got a little better on his ride home.
So I'm still on the Great Taste Trail going towards Richmond and Nelson, going back towards the airport. I've been on the bike about 4 hours at this point, and I'm wishing I had Greg's butt pad. It's getting uncomfortable. I'm ready to be done. I'm navigating to a pizzeria. So far I've had 1.5 protein bars to eat today. So that was part of my problem, and I had about 1/3 of a bottle of water. So I haven't had much to drink or eat, and I'm kind of feeling like these sheep right now. So I'm kind of looking forward to doing some of that soon. Why did nobody tell me that this was an option? Seriously, it's a blow cart. So a couple random thoughts on this bike ride thing. If you have not been on a bicycle in years, a 32-mile ride is probably too long. And rather than assume that there's food and water along the route, you should ask. Yeah, so I finally started navigating to a pizza parlor. Except as you can see, there's a highway here. You can't get across there. So there's no food.
Oh no, for the 3rd time.
I don't know where I'm going to eat, but I'm starving. And I look forward to whatever it is.
This poor man did not eat until he'd gotten back to the airport. He enjoyed a pastrami sandwich that he did not photograph on account of the hunger. He did, however, photograph the peanut M&Ms he noticed after his ride were in his bag the whole time. Never fear, his spirits would return eventually. After another layover and a hearty breakfast in Auckland, Nick was off to his final destination. Let's check in with Stephen and see what he's up to after his multi-city walking tour. After an early bedtime in an actual bed in London, Stephen was back on a bus in the late morning and headed off to a town he knew well, Guilford, an old historic town close by where he grew up.
Hi, so I didn't actually share whereabouts I was going to be going after I left London, and that's because I figured it was a place that none of you would have ever heard of, which is one of the reasons I wanted to come here. It's a place called Guilford, and it's really close to where I grew up, and it's where my wife and I lived for a couple of years before we headed into the US. And one of the reasons I'm here is because it's a really old city, and we have behind me Guilford Castle, and this dates back, it's thought, to just after 1066, which is when William the Conqueror came over from Normandy and conquered England at the Battle of Hastings. And then the castle walls behind me, right there, and then a bit further down, they're thought to date back to the 1200s and 1300s. So it's a super old place, which when you grow up living in the UK, you don't really appreciate all the history that's there until you live somewhere that's a little bit newer.
And Stephen appreciated it even more considering it had been quite some time since he had seen the castle.
Probably like a good 12, 13 years or something like that. So yeah, it had been a fair amount of time since I'd probably last been up there.
From the castle, he made his way to High Street and was sure to enjoy some British cuisine of scones and clotted cream at a tea shop. After logging even more miles on foot, 4 to be exact, his parents picked him up. He couldn't make it all the way to southeast England and not see them. And they gave him a delicious hot meal and let him crash in an actual comfortable bed for the night. The following morning, he was back at the airport and enjoyed a lovely lounge breakfast, complete with all the standbys, including sausage, eggs, and whiskey. He noted in a blog post, "I wouldn't normally have whiskey at 10:30 a.m., but I wanted to milk the visit for all it was worth. You know, considering the amount of miles you've walked in a week and how few times you've slept in an actual bed, we don't blame you." And so, from there, it was off to another exciting destination. Not to be his last just yet, but let's see how Greg's doing in South Africa.
A lot of my whole trip was designed around this in a way. I had looked up, different modes of transportation. I found this as like one of the best deals out there.
Ooh, so what mode of transport did Greg end up on?
I'm now on the Shosholoza mail train from Johannesburg to Cape Town. The way it works is for about $50, they let you get into a sleeper compartment. Since I went alone, you get a 4-person room and so up to 3 roommates. In this case, I only got 1 roommate, so it's actually very comfortable. The train stops all the frickin' time. I had read ahead of time that chances were very good that we would be late in arriving in Cape Town. We're supposed to arrive at 3:30 on the second day, but I don't think that's gonna happen. It's been really fun also looking out the window, seeing all kinds of animals. I saw ostriches and lots of other things that I couldn't name if you asked me to, but met lots of nice people on the train. I had a lot of fun having dinner with some people and just hanging out in the hallway.
I'm Norma.
I'm Declan.
I'm Benjamin.
And I'm Scott.
But apparently we'll be also eventually getting into the mountains, which should get really beautiful at that point. So.
We're now passing the Three Sisters, which are those flat top mountains there.
Wow. Looks like smooth sailing so far.
Well, this is bad news that we've just informed that part of the track, if I understood correctly, is being repaired.
Uh-oh.
Now there's a problem with the train and we're stopped now in the middle of the desert, so it's still fine for now, but at this point I have no idea when I'll get to Cape Town. Hopefully it's before my next flight. Apparently there is going to be buses at the next city for us if they could ever get the train that far. Now we're finally rolling again, so that's good news. It looks like we will eventually get somewhere. It's going to be very, very late. Most likely the train will get into Cape Town in the middle of the night, which is not too great for what I want to do. So I'm probably going to switch to a bus at the next city. And so it's a disappointment because I really enjoyed the train. It's been a great trip and I'd like it to continue. On the other hand, I do want to get to Cape Town and start enjoying being there.
Totally understandable. And keeping in good spirits, Greg eventually did transfer over to a bus.
A bus is going to pick us up.
We think.
And yeah, we expect to see it right here, but I guess it's on the other side of tracks. And here's our next ride. So here's our view by bus of the Dodoran Valley.
Well, we were glad to see it was back to smooth sailing once he was on the bus.
So part of the bus fell off, apparently.
What?
And so we stopped to get it. This might delay us just a tiny bit.
Well, it turns out they didn't arrive to Cape Town until 9:30 p.m., 6 hours after their original planned arrival time. So how did his friends who decided to stay on the train fare?
Right. If it wasn't a matter of having to be somewhere, I gotta get there in time, I would have definitely stayed on the train. That would have been bad, it turned out. A family I had made friends with, they stayed on the train, and I later found out from them that train gave them free food because of the inconvenience of how long they had to wait, and they all got stomach poisoning or food poisoning from that food. The train was also apparently on fire when it arrived in Cape Town.
Oh my. Looks like you made the right call there, Greg. Let's let him get a little rest while we check in with Stephen. After having logged nearly 30 miles on foot over the few days previous, and after crunching some numbers, when Stephen landed in Copenhagen, he decided to rent a car.
Hi, so I got into Copenhagen last night and picked up my rental car. I drove 45 minutes north to a place called Helsingør because I was hoping to see this castle behind me, but it was dark by the time I got here, so I just ended up sleeping overnight in the car and then headed there this morning so I could check it out, and it's in a nice setting. And then just now I went to a local grocery store called Fotex to pick up some breakfast because I figured I may as well try some traditional Danish food while I'm here. So I picked up not one but 2 Danish pastries, plus I picked up some Keininger frikadeller, which are chicken meatballs, which are apparently also traditional, so looking forward to trying those.
After breakfast, he made his way somewhere he was really excited about.
Okay, so you know how I was in Belgium the other day hunting for trolls? Well, guess what? I'm in Denmark and there were more. Yep, Thomas Dambo, who created all the trolls that are in Belgium, also created 6 around the outskirts of Copenhagen. So I have my rental car today and I'm going to go check them all out. My original plan was to go on a bike ride and go see them all, but then when I mapped it all out I realised it was going to be 40 miles, and having seen how bad it was for Nick even just doing 32 miles, I'm really glad that I had changed my mind ahead of time and booked a rental car instead, because it's going to be much, much easier.
And thank goodness he did, because even with the rental car, he walked nearly 10 more miles troll hunting that day. After finding them all, it was back to the airport for dinner at a lounge, and then on to his next destination. Nick's next destination would actually be his final 40K to faraway stop, and it certainly fit the faraway bill.
Ah, yes. Arrived in Niue.
It was not only in the middle of the Pacific, it was also a faraway time.
Yes, because you crossed the date line. So we went backwards in time. It's kind of like the Groundhog Day thing. It's due day all over again. Flying from Auckland to Niue. Exit stamp, if I remember correctly now, probably showed a day later than my entry stamp.
Nick shared with us how fascinatingly tiny this place was.
And you get to Niue, and it's a very small airport. When you arrive, there's 2 flights in and out a week. The boarding passes and everything is handwritten at the airport. The person working like sort of TSA at the airport was also the guitar player at our resort. It was very
Really?
because it's only a 2-day-a-week job at the airport, right? So if you want to drive there, you have to get a local license. So you have to go to the police station and get a local license for not very much money. Of course, I asked, well, do I have to do that first before I get the car? And they were like, no, just, at some point stop at the police station. Today, tomorrow, just stop at the police station. It was very laid back. And in fact, we picked up a rental car, and for return, they told us, just park it at the airport and leave the keys in it. And I was like, just park it and leave the keys in it? Pretty small. It's right here somewhere. and I got to thinking, I was like, well, I don't know, where are you going to go with it? There's
That's true.
Flights in and out a week. There's, you're not going to leave the island, so who's going to steal it? You're not going to get away with that.
Yeah. And while there, he decided to do a thing or two you could only do on a small island.
And I joined the yacht club for what I think was like $12 or $15, some reasonable amount of money. I was able to join a yacht club. Got you a little laminated card, and I did bring it to the New York Yacht Club because Niue Yacht Club NYC has the same initials, so give it a shot. They let me come in and see the models in the first floor, not the rest of the place, but and the island itself was really cool to see. There are no rivers that run off into the ocean there. So the water is incredibly clear because there's no sediment getting washed into it. And there's one resort on the island, and it didn't even have hot water every day or the whole time necessarily. So there were caves to go visit, and that was pretty cool. The one trip where we went to see the dolphins, but you do a lot of snorkeling.
Joining a yacht club, swimming with dolphins, sounds like a perfect spot for his final 40K assignment.
Tough assignment, but someone had to do it. I had to buy that t-shirt. Right. And the tough assignment, but somebody had to do it, was perfect for 40K to faraway.
Suffice it to say, it was a pretty darn amazing 40K to faraway trip, but he was excited to reunite with his family who joined him in New Zealand after Niue. Let's see how Greg fared after his long train and bus journey to Cape Town.
Good morning from Cape Town. I had a long night last night getting here, but eventually did, and met up with a good friend who took me in and finally had a great night's sleep, and now I am going to spend the day exploring Cape Town. Yay! With my friends Kate and Bruce, and they're gonna show me around. First stop is Signal Hill, you said?
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. We're at the top of Signal Hill now in Cape Town, and it's beautiful up here looking down on the Cape Town. This is where we should be looking at Table Mountain behind me, but well, with the fog, it's hard to see, but at least you can see me, just as nice, right? So Table Mountain is fogged over, but Lion's Head is looking nice and clear. All right, this is another view from Signal Hill and Devil's Peak, just partially covered in clouds. And now Cape Town, you see all around. So behind me is Hout Bay, and the tall peak is the Sentinel. Look how beautiful that is.
There were beautiful views as they drove around to see the Cape Town sights. But it wasn't just mountains they were there to see.
Penguins, here they come. We're now at Boulder Beach, where there's a whole bunch of penguins everywhere, and if you come in good weather, you can actually swim with them. What about you, Kate? Have you ever swam with the penguins?
I canoed once with a penguin.
You canoed?
Yeah.
How do they hold the oars?
With a tiny little slippers.
And of course, a visit to South Africa wouldn't be complete without a
wine tasting. We're at Cape Point Vineyards, enjoying some wine. This is our first round. How many rounds are we in for?
I think about 6.
About 6 rounds, so may or may not be staggering away from this. We'll see.
Never fear, they safely made it home. Greg's last leg of the challenge took him back through Africa and over to the Seychelles, where he planted his 40K to faraway ending point flag and enjoyed a little R&R.
So I'm at the Hilton Doubletree Seychelles. I'm really impressed how gorgeous this property is. I was a little hesitant to book a Doubletree because I really wanted to, at the end of this 40K to faraway challenge, really wanted to book something over the top like a Ritz or whatever. But this place is actually really nice. It's beautiful. Every room has an ocean view. I'm digging it.
Nicely done, Greg. So Stephen, is he nearly done with his challenge yet? While Stephen's venture didn't take him as far-flung as islands in the Pacific, one of his big goals was to plan a return trip, even though that wasn't one of the requirements of the challenge, and travel as long as possible. And when he achieved this goal, it definitely impressed readers. Flying back to the U.S. on day 9 via Swiss Air through Zurich, Stephen proceeded to travel in the States with his 40K to faraway challenge budget for 5 more days. This included another airport sleep, a few hostel stays to save his remaining dollars, and a lucky streak at Atlantic City. The Hard Rock Casino turned out to be a perfect place to stretch his budget. Not only did his status afford him a free buffet meal, but a reader tip of cashing out as you went meant he won back most of what he spent there. From there, he headed back to D.C. to complete his round-trip cycle. With enough money left in his budget to splurge a little, Stephen style, he enjoyed a burger and a Groupon Segway tour. We're going to say that counts as a bonus mode of transport. You could say DC sufficed his round-trip ending point, but no, Stephen had more in the budget and spent another whole day in Richmond visiting the Museum of Fine Arts, stopping by Belle Isle, and catching another mode of transport, a city scooter. And so, it was fitting Stephen closed out his 40K to faraway journey, adding yet another mode of transport to his impressive list for the challenge.
Hi, so Stephen here. I'm coming to the end of my 40K to faraway journey. I'm currently on the Elizabeth River Ferry, just crossed over from Norfolk to Portsmouth. In just a couple of minutes, should hopefully be able to see my wife and dog.
Wait, didn't Truffles travel along with you? Just kidding.
So this has been an absolutely amazing journey. 3,000 membership rewards and $400 has been quite the experience. That's my wife waiting up there with our pup.
And so Stephen was reunited with his beloved Cheyenne pup.
Truffy, hi. There's not as much screening as I thought.
I'll squeal.
Okay. That's it for 40K to far away. All of us are finished. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye.
And so the 40K to faraway challenge had finally come to a close. But it was time to check our stats and see who won. So, who traveled the farthest amount of miles? Stephen came in third, logging a still impressive 12,584 miles. Greg was second, logging 18,037 miles. And Nick was the mile leader with 19,619 miles. But keep in mind, they also had to keep within budget. Did they all achieve this goal? Well, they all did a great job staying within their points budget, but unfortunately, there was a critical snafu and Nick blew his cash budget.
Let me ask you something. Are there any plans that you dreamed up
that you really wish you had somehow figured out a way to do?
Standard budget.
Long story short, Nick was slated to be under budget due to a clever gift card hack he cooked up, but unfortunately his delay in jumping on it meant he missed the window and went over budget to the tune of $270.90. Still impressive what all he accomplished. You can find more details on this snafu and the nitty-gritty of other elements of the challenge on frequentmiler.com, but let's cut to the chase. For this challenge, reader vote was what weighed in the most. So without further ado, our first ever Frequent Miler Challenge winner for 2019's 40K to Far Away was Greg Davis Keene. Congratulations, Greg, and congrats to all the guys for their hard work and fun times on this first ever challenge. Suffice it to say, it set the stage for many more challenges and fun points and miles moments to come.
Yay.